all. I'm Joel Younger, the president of the Association of Cameroonians in Denmark, ACAD. And just to reiterate once more, ACAD comprises of all those who originate from Cameroon living in Denmark. And our aim is to improve our cooperation amongst ourselves and also to get acquainted with life within the Danish society. And today we have a special program which is captioned ACAD Debates, in order to see how we could talk about improving our lives in relation to how to integrate ourselves within the Danish society. The moderator of this debate is going to spell it out well and even give us the debate topic, so I'll not go so much into that. You're welcome to have a wonderful experience with some intellectuals from Cameroon who have to talk about our state of living here in Denmark. And we aim at really cooperating with even the Danes, whom we live, who are the ones having this, who are the nationals of this country, in order to be able to understand their culture, as well as also promote our culture while living in Denmark. Without taking much of your time, I will go forward to introduce the moderator of today's debate, who is going to release the debate topic. And the debate is going to take a form of a panel discussion, which really does not clearly define those who are against or for the motion, but it's all about coming up with ideas that can better give us knowledge as to how to get in along with the Danish, in the Danish society. So, without much ado, I will introduce our moderator of today, and I would like everyone to give a hand to this dynamic gentleman. You will see for yourself how he's going to represent himself. I don't have much to talk about, but you all are going to know that he's worth a moderator for today's debate. He's no other person than Mr. Ekane Meswe Gilbert.
Thanks very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, you're all welcome. Today is Saturday the 19th, as you all know. We have the first ACAD debates. It's the first of its kind that we're having in Denmark. And we are very pleased that all of you have taken pains to see that you honor this invitation to be here. The problem of job and unemployment, as you all know, is a very important one, because it's not just because families have had to spend a lot of money and resources to see that they carry all of us to where we are today, but because you can also accept that it's very disheartening that we allow our qualifications to rot and decay in our pockets because of contradictions which have been placed upon us, not only by the political setup, but also by the economic arrangements. So today we'll try to look into how we can try to answer the question as to why is it difficult to obtain academic jobs in Denmark? Why is it difficult to get academic jobs in Denmark? So to help us try to answer this question, it's important that we also announce that at the end of this debate, we should be able to tell audience what can be done to tackle this difficulty that we have in this society. To go about this discussion, like the President said, it's not going to be a debate where we'll have two opposing camps confronting each other. What we're going to have will be like a discussion series around this idea, because we are all agreed that having a job, securing a position for oneself is very important. And no other person here can argue that we don't need this kind of security, for job, for our personal self, personal fulfillment, personal entitlement, but also for the rest of our families and for this society. So remember that what we do here today is not because we are specialists par excellence. What we do here is because we are concerned Cameroonians. All the panelists, whom I'm going to call in an instant to take their positions here, are just like one of us. The only difference being that today they have to help us, to guide us, to try to see some of those contradictions we have in this new society where we're living and how we can go about trying to unpack and unlock these challenges that we face. Moderator would like to request that people should keep their calm as possible, because after the rounds of discussions here, there's going to be a place at the end where members of the audience are allowed to put questions to any member of their choice from the panel. So what I intend to do here tonight is to help to guide this discussion right to the end. And I'll be able to do this by framing a number of direct questions to the panelists, for which they'll be expected to react to the question within 7 to 10 minutes. Then there'll be a big question which will be addressed to some other member of the panel who will help to either repudiate what the main speaker has said or to support. So without much ado, I would like to introduce the members of the panel. And I'll start with the gentleman who is already sitting right here beside me to my right. And he is Dr. Ransom Lekunze. He holds a PhD and is a lecturer at Metropolitan University College in Copenhagen. And he has written a publication for which he would like to present tonight as guest speaker. Then I'll call on Mr. Kenneth Chi to take the seat. Mr. Kenneth Chi is a case officer working at the job center, the Sudao Pengen, or otherwise the Office for Invalidity and other claims relating to sickness within the Copenhagen Council. I'll call on Mr. Terence Yu Young to take the place. So, Mr. Terence Yu Young is a trained historian, and he has been studying history as his area of concentration. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in history with honors from the University of Boya and a master's degree in Scandinavian history from Linköping University in Sweden. And because he is such a dedicated scholar, he went further and studied for a master's degree in educational planning and administration from Oslo University. He is the founder and president of a consultancy known as Education for Growth, for which he is also pioneer member and president for quality research and consultancy in Copenhagen, Denmark. Welcome. I'll invite Mr. Aaron Sama to come up and take a seat right here. Mr. Aaron Sama is a civil engineer by training. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the Engineering College of Copenhagen, where he majored in electronics. And his quest for further knowledge took him to Technical University of Denmark, where he studied telecommunications engineering. Behind him is 5 years plus of industrial experience, working with reputable corporations like Nokia, Analog Devices, and Dixon's Retail. You're welcome. I'll call on one other gentleman who, by some coincidence, I call him my Moyo. It's Mr. Aka Tazi Aloshos. Please, come and take. Mr. Aka has been a consummate scholar all through his student life, and is a consultant in maritime affairs with special expertise in procurement and logistics. He holds a Master of Science degree in Maritime Affairs from the United Nations World Maritime University. He holds a further Master of Science degree in Technology and Socioeconomic Planning from Roskilde University, and a certificate in Public Procurement from United Nations Development Program Certified Chartered Institute of Purchase and Supply in the United Kingdom. So you're welcome, gentlemen. And to complete the panel, we are going to invite Mr. Celestine Foucault to join us. Treasure. He holds a Master of Science degree in Finance from the University of Skövde in Sweden, and he studied IT and Business Renewal from Jönköping International University. He is, together with Mr. Terry, in consultancy business, where he's the pioneer and vice president of quality research and consultancy for growth here in Copenhagen. So you're welcome, gentlemen. So, dear brothers and sisters, we now have the panel complete. And like we said before, now is the time for which we have to open our ears and try to see what we're able to do as a contribution to help uplift the challenge to secure academic jobs in Denmark. So I'll call on Dr. Ransom Lekunze to make a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, ACAD and ACAD management for this opportunity that you have given me to be able to set the pace of this debate. I will set the pace based on my own personal work and also based on research that has been done by the OECD. For those of you who do not know what the OECD stands for, the OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's a think tank, and it's one of the world's most renowned research institutions that actually produces research to help some 30 developed countries to be able to form policy. So This work has been peer-reviewed, meaning that the data that I will be able to present to you today has been peer-reviewed and, has actually been qualified to be data that we can be able to work with in our context here. What I will not do is not to be able to influence the nature of these debates, meaning that giving my own personal reflections, I will simply be able to present this research work based on what it is. And what's the title, what is the topic of my presentation today? It's Labor Market and Integration of Foreigners in Denmark. It ties very much, or fits in very much with the topic that we are going to discuss here today. I will try to be very brief, and please interrupt me if you need further clarification. Let me begin by giving a very snapshot of what Denmark is all about. It's a country of 5.4 million people, about 1/4 the population of Cameroon. But we all know that Cameroon has got a population of about 20 million. This is a very normative figure that has been doctored, probably by the forces that are in place to be able to, seek some help or seek some benefits from the international community. The population of Cameroon could probably be more than 20 or could probably be less than 20, but we all know this has been the doctored figure. But if Denmark tells us that its population is 5.4, we can trust and we can believe on that. But we have to go with what we have. The population of Denmark is kind of aging. Aging meaning that there are more people in the ages beyond 60 years and very few people within the active force, which is less than 60 years. This is kind of a concern for a country because the workforce is getting smaller and then the people who are actually in need of support are getting bigger. We will also be able to realize that Denmark is one of those countries where immigration doesn't play too much of a very big factor because only 7% of the population in Denmark is made up of immigrants, as compared to other European countries or other developed countries in the world. But Denmark's small immigrant population is not something that we really need to be doubt about, simply because Denmark hasn't got a history of immigration as other Western countries or some of those countries that really had very strong historical implications. And Denmark's immigration actually began in the 1980s, meaning that prior to the 1980s there was not really too much immigrants moving into Denmark. But after the 1980s, Denmark started accepting humanitarian immigrants and also immigrants into the country who were coming for family reunion. And in that case, we had people coming from Scandinavia and from Germany and from other places around. But after the year 2000, Denmark got the opportunity to join the rest of the world in accepting skilled immigrants to be able to boost their workforce and to be able to be competitive in the world market. So that's the picture. But where are Danish immigrants? Where do they actually come from? It is important for us to take a time train. In the 1980s, most immigrants into Denmark came from the neighboring countries. In the 1990s, it also still came from the neighboring countries. But towards after the year 2000, we will realize that the war in Iraq and also the war in the Balkan regions contributed to, most migrants coming into Denmark from the war zones, the Balkans, and also from the war in Iraq for humanitarian grounds. So it was only in the year 2000 that Denmark thought, okay, people like you and I could be able to come into this country, or people reflected or thought they could be able to come into Denmark. With that picture in mind, I think it will be necessary for us to be able to look at what does Denmark actually need as immigrants? What are they interested? What has the Danish government been interested in as immigrants? Research has been able to show that immigrants have contributed a lot in making big countries bigger, or big countries the way they are. The United States, England, most of these countries have grown because of immigrant labor. So Denmark is no exception. And research has proven that Denmark will have a such shortage of 30,000 highly skilled immigrants by the year 2030. 30,000 highly skilled. It's a big amount. Foreigners actually contribute in strengthening the Danish economy. And research has also proven that if there is an addition of 1,000 skilled non-Danes into the Danish economy, it contributes to 1.3 billion Danish kroner annually into the Danish economy. So we are not taking money out of the Danish economy, we are instead bringing in or contributing money into the Danish economy. So after the year 2000, Denmark thought this is time for us to join the rest of the world in attracting skilled immigrants into this country. Then they opened up the green card system. In a while, I'll be able to talk a little bit about the green card system, but what I need to stigmatize about the green card system here is that the number of people actually applying for the green card system will decrease in 2011 by about 28% due to the fact that if I increase the fee to up to 6,100 Danish kroner for application. So it's a key issue. So if the immigrants have been coming in using the green card system, it becomes an issue now. But then, there are some areas within the Danish labor market that do not have, are really in high demand of skilled immigrants. And which are these areas? And when I'm naming these areas, you should be able to position yourself. Do I find myself in one of these sectors, in one of these areas? It's engineers. We have had an introduction of the panel, some people are engineers, medical doctors, physicists, chemists, economists, accountants, auditors, mathematicians, statisticians, IT experts. These are the areas that Denmark will need about 30,000 people by 2030. So that's very important to know. Then there was also a research carried out, by the Danish industry. They did a survey in 2006 and asked companies, where have you been able to have difficulty or experience difficulty finding sufficient labor? And this was their result. For the companies that actually were looking for skilled labor, this was the score. They had the highest score. More than 100 employees was what they were lacking for those companies that were looking for skilled labor. For the companies that were looking for highly educated technical people, they also had an extremely very high score. But for companies that were looking for highly educated people with linguistic skills, those who have studied languages, that was a very, very low score. They had no problem finding people in this domain. Highly educated administrative people, they had no problem finding people in this domain. Highly educated commercial people, there was no problem finding employees with this kind of qualification. Who can give me an example? Why? They don't have a problem finding people in these three categories. Is anybody inspired to give me a reason why industries in Denmark don't find a problem actually hiring people or finding people with these three categories? Linguistic skills, administrative and commercial skills. Because Danes themselves are highly involved in these sectors. So the competition is tough. But Danes are very rare to be found in these skilled and highly educated technical areas, the areas that we have mentioned before. So if you have a degree in one of these areas that I have mentioned before, that there's a scarcity or lack of labor, please, you should be able to consider that you have a degree but you're not using the potential of that degree. But if you do not have a degree in those particular areas, you should have to reconsider, can this debate help me to be able to find my way into one of these particular areas? It will be very important.
Dr. Ransom,
yes.
Where then does the issue of educated foreigners studying Danish play in here when you talk of the Danish labor market not having problems in the area of linguistics? How then does the issue of Danish language help the foreigners get these jobs? You're already indicating that it's it is very, very competitive around that area.
Yes, it's highly competitive. If you have a degree in linguistics, not having a degree in the Danish language, I hope you understand. Yeah. In the linguistic domain, if you have a degree in the administrative domain, that's what Danes do. It's very easy for them to be able to go study administration. study linguistics, study commercial areas. It's become very competitive. If you and a Dane have to sit, on the same hiring table, and they think of accepting you and leaving a Dane out. But if you come with a highly skilled technical degree, you sit on the table, you will find very few Danes competing with you. I guess you understand? Yeah. Okay. Now, we all know about the story about, the current economic crisis that is hitting lots of countries in Europe, and other countries in the rest of the world. It has also hit Denmark as well. So what's happening is that jobs have been lost within Denmark, and it is playing a very big toll, a heavy toll on the Danish economy. So what happens is that there has been an outsourcing of most Danish industries out of the country. Most Danish industries have moved out of the country in order to look for cheap labor, in order to look for, highly competitive labor out of the country. So wages in most sectors have actually not been able to be increased like it was before, and there have been a heavy influx of workers from other EU countries into Denmark in search of labor. So that has brought in a very strong competition into the Danish system. If you look at this chart here, this is the chart showing the influx of workers from other EU countries into Denmark. It's been a very, very strong curve. So
not only workers, also companies also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the picture, and I think this picture helps all of us who are sitting here. This is the most important graph that I think that we should pay attention to. What is the situation of employment right now in Denmark? What was the scenario before, and what is the scenario into 2012? This is something that we have to know. Are you secured at your jobs? Is there a possibility that if you have a skilled qualification, you'll be able to find jobs in the next 3 months, in the next year, or whatsoever? This picture will be able to guide us. But these are projections. Sometimes projections can backfire. These are mere projections that have been made. So what we have to understand is that prior to 2008, when the economic crisis actually began, the Danish economy was doing fine in terms of employment. Then after 2008, it came down, and then somewhere in the first quarter of 2010, it kind of stabilized. But in the third quarter of 2011, meaning in the summer of this year, employment in Denmark started improving. But it is improving in a very gradual, very, very gradually. So there are prospects that by the third quarter of 2012, by this time next year, the situation must have had some slight improvement. So we could be able to judge based on this to be able to say, okay, these are the trends that Denmark is following. But relative to other European countries, Denmark is doing fairly well when it comes to employment. Denmark is still doing fairly well when it comes to employment. Okay, now, what are the key problems about, the integrating immigrants into the Danish system? What are the key problems? It's become a key issue in the public debate, and this is triggered by, the employment outcomes of mostly immigrants. What is the statistics? What is the figure? The gap in employment rates of immigrants compared to native-born Danes is amongst the highest within the OECD, 30 developed countries. It's the highest. The gap between those immigrants who are in Denmark and the native Danes when it comes to unemployment is the highest gap. So unemployment is more than twice higher for immigrants as compared to native Danes. Then I have this picture here to show us and to illustrate what I have just said. Employment rates of immigrants in most countries, compared. This is what we get for Denmark. This is what we get for Denmark as compared to, other European countries like, France, like the United Kingdom, like Germany, like Belgium. Even Sweden has a lower rate as compared to, Denmark. So the gap between, the immigrants who are in Denmark and the Danes themselves, Denmark has the highest within the European Union and also within the OECD. So it is a problematic issue. Then, What
Please,
kind of...
can I interrupt?
Yes.
What gap? The gap of lesser immigrants having jobs in Denmark than in other countries?
No, no.
So what gap are you talking about?
It is the ratio between immigrants in the country having jobs as compared to native Danes having jobs.
Okay.
That's the ratio.
So
So Denmark has the highest ratio
okay.
within Europe and within the OECD. So that was the ratio. I don't know how to go back with on this computer. Okay, what kind of immigrants does Denmark actually accept within the country? What are the characteristics of immigrants? A substantial part of immigrant population in Denmark has tertiary education, and by tertiary education, here, what do I mean? That they have more than a high school education. It can either be a professional education or university education or whatsoever, but they have more than a tertiary education attainment. Yet this does not yield as a large impact on their employment probabilities. Even the qualification is obtained in Denmark. Even it doesn't matter if you obtain your qualification here in Denmark or not. Most of the immigrants that are here have more than, a high school qualification, but they do not happen to find jobs. So this is also the picture which tells us, Denmark also has, the highest gap. It's just exactly what I've been able to explain. Employment rates for educated level between immigrants and the native one compared to compared less favorably for high qualified immigrants. What I am trying to explain here is that within Denmark, you will find that most immigrants who are here are highly qualified. But if you want to compare the ratio of these highly qualified migrants in Denmark to Danes who are highly qualified, the unemployment rate within the immigrants is higher as compared to the Danes. And Denmark also tops the chart based on this OECD publication. Denmark also tops that chart of the gap that is kind of really very big. So what therefore is the problem with Denmark? What makes Denmark a problem? Why is Denmark problematic? I say that there are key structural entry barriers in the Danish labor market that you and I should be able to identify. What makes Denmark a problem? Foreign qualifications and experience may not be recognized by employees in Denmark. Most employees in Denmark do not accept or qualify your certificate when you bring it from outside. That is a key issue. Language also is a major barrier within Denmark. And why is language a major barrier? It is a major barrier simply because most Danish enterprises are small and medium-sized enterprises, and their corporate language is Danish. So if you do not learn the corporate language, please, it is not possible for you to break through into the Danish system when you do not know the corporate language. And most of these corporations or companies will feel much more comfortable with you when they understand your language, when you understand their language and you can speak the corporate language. Then there's also something called the corporate culture. If we know the corporate language and we understand the corporate culture, then there is a possibility of breaking through. But the very fact that foreigners do not get this kind of attainment, it becomes a problem. Then there are also specifications of the Danish labor market. 1/3 of the Danish employment is in the public sector. So the state employs, 1/3 of the people. Only 2/3 are employed by the private sector. And, most private sector whatsoever, they create a lot of jobs. But please, for you and I to be able to join the public sector within a country, it's not an easy thing. It's something that is reserved for those who know the culture, know the language, and identify themselves with the system. So it becomes an issue. So private employment is largely dominated by small and medium-sized enterprises. However, immigrants seem to be present here, mainly in catering sectors and what I call the 3D jobs: dangerous, dirty, and difficult. And these are the 3D jobs: restaurants, laundry, cleaning, welfare, and cargo. These are the 3D jobs which I do qualify. And the fourth barrier is that even the few employed in skilled jobs do not have benefits from company-based training and wage subsidies as native-born Danes. Those of us who happen to be in the skilled jobs where we are kind of trained, we do not have the same benefits and the same advantages as native Danes. This is very true. Company-based training, most of for immigrants do not have this take advantage of these benefits, and also they do not have wage subsidies in their jobs. So my problem is the problem really discrimination, or what is it? If the problem is discrimination, then I will call it that we can say we can blame the Danish system. Then we can use the term the blame game on the Danish system if the problem is discrimination. I will say yes, the problem is discrimination partly. There is a selective hiring in the Danish labor market. That is very, very clear. Results have shown that immigrants are frequently or infrequently selectively ignored in the recruitment process, even when they have similar characteristics as native Danes. That's very true. But